Hi there, and welcome to Steps Together, the Steps for Development podcast, where we come together to learn and build our own skills so that we can help the children in our lives to thrive and succeed. I'm your host, Deb Johnson, and I'm so glad you're here. Regardless of your role in a child's life, you've come to the right place to learn about development, challenging behaviors, and kids who are differently wired. Here you'll learn the why behind those behaviors, practical strategies that make a real difference, and how to advocate and support all children as you become empowered with tools and skills that make a lasting difference. In the last episode, I was talking about how self-regulation is a journey, not a destination. Our goal is not to be well-regulated and calm all the time. That's just not being human. Our goal is to learn how to regulate. On several episodes, I've talked a little bit about how important it is for adults to co-regulate with their children. And I get this a lot in OT sessions, in my parent coaching sessions, and we talk about it a lot from a therapeutic standpoint. How do we as therapists practice that co-regulation with children? So today I want to dive in to talk a little bit about what I think are three core skills that support co-regulation for our children. It's important to know that these skills are not necessarily just inherent and automatic. Some of us are better at some of these things than others, right? We're all hardwired a little differently, but co-regulation is a skill that takes practice. It's something I think that we can all learn. It's what I teach through Steps for Development is how to build your own skills so that you can co-regulate with those children better. The three skills we're going to talk about today are, number one, your own self-regulation. Number two, the skill of empathy. And yes, that is a skill. And three, communication skills that build connection. So if you have ever struggled with staying calm during a meltdown, or have felt drained or helpless at trying to guide a child with co-regulation, this episode is for you. So stick around. All right, let's dive into skill number one, which is your own self-regulation. This is crucial because the whole idea of co-regulation is that you loan your calm state of emotional regulation to the child, that your child is able to entrain with you. So entrainment is something that our brains do when we're connected with another person. Our brain waves will sync up. Research has shown this over and over again, that we connect, and our brains and our nervous systems will actually reflect or imitate the person that we're connected with. So this concept of co-regulation requires that one person, in this case, the adult, be the one who is emotionally well regulated, and you loan that calm to the child. You are sharing it, you're showing them and sort of getting them onto your train, or, if we're going to keep that analogy of self-regulation, emotional regulation being a journey, you're going to invite them into your car so that they can see how you drive. Right? That's the idea of co-regulation, inviting them in so they can see how you drive and feel the smooth road that you're driving on. So you need to be regulated going into a situation where your child is struggling. And you also need to be aware of whether you are escalating right along with your child. So going into any situation where your child is frustrated or upset or however they're dysregulated, if you go into that already dysregulated, or you go into that situation with your child and you escalate right along with them, neither one of those is going to work to regulate your child. Keep in mind that our children watch what we do and follow or imitate what we do to a far greater degree than they follow our verbal directions, right? That old saying, right? Do as I say, not as I do, because we often don't practice what we preach. And I'm just going to tell you that we need to practice what we preach. We need to remember how important it is for us to stay regulated, because a child's nervous system and executive function skills are not developed to support their own successful navigation on this road of regulation. They just do not have the skill set. And so it's so very important that we co-regulate. And we have to remember that they need us first to model how to drive, how to navigate, how to manage these roadblocks and traffic jams. And then they need us to be their co-pilot. So we step back and allow them to build that independence and autonomy, but we're still there to provide that guidance. In order to do that, we have to practice what we preach. We cannot teach how to use strategies like mindfulness if we don't even understand what that means and we don't know how to do it ourselves. This is one of the biggest challenges that a therapist will face, whether you're an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, a mental health clinician. If you're trying to teach a child mindfulness, it's very difficult if they don't have a model on a daily basis, someone who actually does practice mindfulness regularly. They need that model. So if you can embrace learning some new strategies, if you don't know how to be mindful and be aware, that's a great place to start. You can't teach remaining regulated and using effective coping strategies if you don't know how to do that. And you can't teach how to regain your regulation if you're not consciously aware of what the steps are. What do you yourself do in order to regain your own sense of regulation? How do you bring your big emotions back down? Do you look for somebody to talk to? Do you look for a hug? Do you need quiet time alone? Do you need to put on your headphones and listen to music? Do you need to go out and take a walk? What are the things that you do? It's important that you understand that so that then you can teach your child and you can model for your child. So that's one of the steps for you to recognize what self-regulation is for yourself. Before you even know that, you need to understand your own triggers. You need to recognize your own stress signals. You need to know your own emotional states, right? You have to reflect on your own journey and your own ability to regulate your emotions. How good are your executive function skills? What are your strengths? What are your challenges, right? Reflect on what triggers you, what kinds of situations are most distressing for you. And notice when you become dysregulated, what does it feel like? What does it feel like inside your body? Does your heart race? Do you breathe more shallowly? Do you feel flushed? Do you start pacing? Do you engage in some sort of nervous habit like picking at your nails or biting the inside of your cheek or something like that? And what are you thinking as you become emotionally dysregulated? Do you start to think about worries? Do you start to worry like what might happen? Do you start to ruminate over mistakes? Are you aware of what other people are thinking? So this is challenging work. And I find when I'm coaching that a lot of times adults come to the conclusion that they really need to dive deeper. They need to dig in and do some hard work for themselves about what are their triggers. Do they have some underlying trauma that the child's behaviors or the child's situations are triggering those trauma responses in them? Once you have a good handle, and it's not going to be perfect, but if you've got a fairly decent handle on noticing when you become dysregulated, knowing how it feels and what you think, you're on the road to practicing mindfulness. You can be more aware in the moment of when you're getting dysregulated. For me, I can tell you it's things like my voice gets louder. I start to talk faster. Um, I can just kind of feel myself. My whole body is sort of getting tense and rising up, along with the volume in my voice, and maybe even my language. My language changes. And I'm able to notice that, being mindful in the moment and say, whoop, need to pause. I need to take a break and collect my thoughts. I don't want to continue to escalate like that. So the next step is knowing what helps you return to calm. Does it mean breathing, pausing? Is it grounding movement that you need? Like I said, taking a walk. Paying attention to the strategies that you yourself use in those moments. That's going to give you your own list of strategies that you can share with your child. And more importantly, things that you can model for your child so that you can say, this is what I do. This step, right? This step of knowing how you maintain your own regulation and being able to implement those strategies that bring you back down, that help you maintain a more even sense of regulation through the day, right? Again, not perfect. Everybody's road is going to be bumpy. There's going to be escalations. There's going to be up times and down times, and there's going to be smooth sailing where everything is great. But being able to embrace learning new skills of how to do that, learning your own mindfulness, being in touch with your own regulation. This is what I call putting on your oxygen mask first. You can't, right? You can't help the child if you yourself are dysregulated. So just like in an airplane, when they tell you, if those oxygen masks drop down, that is the sign of an emergency. And we want you to put your oxygen mask on first so that you can then help the person next to you. This is exactly what we're doing with co-regulation. We are putting on our oxygen mask first. We are taking care of our regulated state. We are taking care of our triggers. We are attending to our needs as the adult so that we then are more well-equipped. We have more energy. We are more objective. We can come at the challenging, escalated situation with our child with more clarity and a better sense of direction. When it comes to regulating your own state, I want to encourage you, model for your child. I used to tell my kids, hang on, I am having a mommy meltdown right now. I can tell I am going to get really upset. Or if I've already exploded, if I've already lost my cool, I will say, I am so sorry. I just had a mommy meltdown and I need a minute. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to turn on some music. Let's dance it out. Let's have a dance party. I'm going to sit down and have a cup of tea. Why don't you have some tea or hot cocoa with me or whatever it is? And I'm trying to model to them. I was frustrated. I was upset. I lost my cool. I got angry, but I know how to recover. And I want my children to see that. I want my children to see that I'm human and that humans learn how to regulate their emotions. When you acknowledge your own mistakes or your own challenges, your own faults, you're not showing your children a sign of weakness. You're embracing a teachable moment where you make true connection and you build trust because your child sees you taking accountability for your own mistakes, for you taking responsibility for your own self-regulation. And remember, I said, children imitate what we do far more often than they follow what we say. So if you model that ability to bring yourself back down, to take responsibility for when you goofed up, for apologizing, for yelling, screaming, losing your cool, you're teaching your child that that is the acceptable behavior. So I want you to do some reflection and take a look in the next week or so. What are the cues that you yourself are getting dysregulated? And what are the things that you do to bring yourself back down? How do you maintain that state? How do you regain that state of calm and quiet for yourself? Once we get a handle on our own emotional state, we can then turn our attention to understanding the child's experience. And that's where the next skill comes into play, empathy. Now, empathy is very often misunderstood. There's probably a gazillion different definitions, a different way to look at it, tons of pop psychology books out there. I am just going to tell you that my muse and my inspiration is the author and researcher Brene Brown. So her series is, she writes about daring leadership, and she writes about the gifts of imperfection. And she is most well known for her work on vulnerability and shame, and how being vulnerable is the foundation of courage, and that it takes courage to lead a wholehearted life. So Brene Brown's definition of empathy is connecting to the feeling underneath another person's experience while not experiencing the feeling yourself. She goes on to say, having empathy means we believe another person's experience, even if we ourselves have never experienced it. This is really, really important. I highly encourage you, if you have interest in diving in deeper on the concepts of vulnerability, courage, and empathy, to dig into some Brene Brown. She is honestly one of my heroes. All right, so 4 components of empathy, and these are the skills that can be taught and the skills that you can hone and learn in order to practice empathy in the best sense so that it's really helpful. Brene Brown says we need to practice perspective taking, staying out of judgment, recognizing the emotion that another person is feeling, labeling it, putting a name to it, and then communicating to the other person that we recognize that emotion. Now, she goes on to say that there are 2 different types of empathy, and this is very, very important. And I find that it translates so well to our work with children and raising children. And I mean, it's just all about being human and connecting in an appropriate way. She talks about cognitive empathy versus affective empathy. So let me clarify those two things for you. We want to learn the art and the skill of cognitive empathy. This is being able to understand another person's perspective and connecting with the feeling without feeling it ourselves. It builds trust and connection between human beings. It means we feel for the person, not with the person. And it creates space that allows us to be supportive without helping. And I'm going to put helping in air quotes here. Writer Anne Lamott has a quote. She says, "Help is the happy side of control." I'm going to say that again. Help is the happy side of control. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, that is exactly what I have said. I totally agree with this, because when we help, when we try to help, we are often doing it because helping meets our need. It's what I call fixing, right? We want to fix our children. We want to fix the problem. They're feeling sad. We want to jump in and fix that. We want to help them feel happy. What we really want to do, Lamott is saying, is to control them. It's not that we're trying to be supportive of the other person. We're trying to fix it so that we don't feel bad, or fix it so that we feel good, whatever it is. And I want you to think about that when you are attempting to guide your child during a meltdown. Are you supportive and guiding, or are you trying to help and fix and ultimately control? That's where we get into trouble. Now, Brown defines affective empathy as feeling the emotion with the person. And she warns that this is really bad. We do not want to practice affective empathy with any human being, let alone our children. We cannot take a leadership role. We cannot take a role of teacher, guidance, support with our children or with any other person. If we are enmeshed, which is what affective empathy is, it means we are feeling the same emotion as the other individual. We've lost our boundaries. We have become one with the other person. So there's a great video that somebody made using Brene Brown's voiceover, where she's explaining the concept of empathy. And she explains this affective empathy as, if a person is down in a hole, if they've climbed into this deep hole underground, and we look down in the hole and we see the other person, if we look down there and we say, wow, you're stuck, that stinks, how could I be of help right now? And the other person says, well, give me a ladder. And we give them a ladder and we help them up. That's cognitive empathy. You're in a tight place. How can I help? Let me support you. But if we see that person down in the hole and we go down in the hole with them, well, now we're both stuck in the hole. So that's enmeshment, this blurring of the boundaries. And it's not only not supportive, now you need support as well. And it's exhausting, right? You're going to end up burned out because you don't have enough energy to help your child or to help whoever. It could be an adult that you're helping. I'm talking about children, but all of this is applicable to just human relationships. The other piece of it is that when you feel with the other person, you yourself can start to experience what's called secondary trauma. So the other person has had a traumatic event and is responding with classic trauma responses. They're having this limbic system fight or flight response. If you join that fight or flight response, it could in fact trigger secondary trauma for you. And now we've got two people that need cognitive empathy from a third so that they can pull them out. And I have to tell you, I totally relate to this. You know, there's a term in psychology that is often used called referring to people being empaths. It means you feel deeply, right? And I think the term, people define it differently. Some people really embrace it as a strength. Some people see it as a negative. Your mileage may vary on this one, as I say. But I think it's an important concept to understand our neurodiversity as human beings, that we all feel things differently. And some of us do have a hardwired system for feeling deeper. We have deeper emotions, bigger emotions. Some people maybe don't feel it as deeply, or maybe they feel it, but they don't show it. Maybe it's a matter of how demonstrative we are about our emotions. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I just know that the people who tend to blur the lines between cognitive and affective empathy are those who they themselves are hardwired to feel more deeply. And maybe you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, oh, holy cow, that's me. That's absolutely me. I just get too enmeshed with my child. I get sucked in. I feel what they feel. Maybe you're even going the route of projecting your own emotional state onto your child. So your child maybe was frustrated, but you got triggered by something and you escalated. And now your child is not only frustrated, but they're feeling anxious and scared and helpless. And they weren't feeling that until they picked up on your emotional state. Again, that's co-regulation. So this is why it is so very, very important. When you stay grounded in cognitive empathy, it helps you to support without absorbing the child's levels of distress and emotional dysregulation. When you're objective and non-judgmental, you can provide guidance and support that is much more effective. And you're going to feel less burnout, less fatigue, less exhaustion yourself, because your strategies, your efforts to guide your child are much more effective. Most of the time, all we need as human beings is to be seen, heard, and respected, to just know that somebody else gets it. Your child is no different. And empathy without the emotional overwhelm leads to more effective co-regulation. Your regulation stays calm so the child's can follow. So what I want to challenge you to do here is to start practice saying things like, that sounds really hard. Or, oh man, your toy is broken. I want you to agree with your child without taking on the feelings. Acknowledge their emotional state, acknowledge their experience, see it from their perspective, but stay focused on supporting and connecting, not fixing, and not taking it on as your own emotional burden. All right, the last skill that I want to talk about is communication. And this third skill is really crucial because how you communicate your empathy is vital, right? You want to make sure that your child knows you get it. This is where we do what I call leaning in to what the child is experiencing. I see you, you're not ready to leave the park right now. Oh, I can see you're really frustrated. You made a mistake on your math. I see how frustrating that is. It's acknowledging and agreeing. It's saying, I see you, I hear you, I get it. The challenge comes in, or the difficulties come in, when we say things like, oh, I see that didn't work out. Well, it's not that big of a deal, right? Oh, you're making a big deal out of this. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Brene Brown talks about many ways that we make what she calls empathy misses. And those are responses that actually are communicated in a way that comes across as judgmental, shaming, blaming, diminishing, belittling, among many other things. That would be a whole nother podcast. We could dive into some of her work with that. The point here is that what you say in these moments and how you say it matter a great deal. Our focus is on using the language that helps us to connect. There's a whole other podcast episode where I've talked a lot about communication, kids that don't listen, and I'll dive into it in a future episode as well, because again, each one of these skills can be another episode or even a whole little course to go through. But the key points I want to make here about communication are that we want to use strategies where we are very, very mindful of our word choice, our tone, our pacing, and our body language. Again, our word choice, the language we use, the tone, the pacing, right, of the delivery, and the body language. Sometimes the way you say it or the nonverbal parts of your communication matter even more than what you say. Some children in these big moments, they just need you to communicate support by staying close to them or hugging them, pulling them onto your lap, right? Which then allows, if they allow you to hold them, that's that physical connection that supports the co-regulation of our nervous systems. Getting down on their level, right? Sitting on the floor with them, sitting right next to them, squatting so that you're not above them and it doesn't feel threatening or intimidating to them. These kinds of nonverbal communication strategies are crucial in being able to co-regulate with your child. So the key points for communication are: we are striving for connection, not correction. Correction, teaching skills, that stuff comes later. But when we're trying to help a child co-regulate, connection is what we want. Non-threatening communication, maybe declarative language, right? I see it's really hard right now. Not blaming and pointing the finger, right? Sometimes not even saying things like, you're angry, because we don't know if anger is what they're really feeling. But connecting with the child so that they know they are seen, heard, and respected. The goal is safety and understanding, not control or compliance. All right, this has been, I think, a heavy episode, a lot of deep things to think about. And I hope you're still with me. I hope you've stuck with it through the whole podcast here. I think it's just so very, very crucial that we as adults know how to do this ourselves before we even make an effort or as we're learning to support our children. So again, quick recap of our co-regulation skills. Number one, our own self-regulation. We've got to have a handle on that before we try to co-regulate with our children. Number two, practicing cognitive empathy, right? Not affective empathy, not joining them, but taking their perspective and appreciating and understanding, respecting their perspective. And then connection-based communication. All of these things are learned skills. They are skills that I continue to hone and work on. I am constantly reading and taking continuing education classes and talking to peers and colleagues and just trying to always improve and empower myself with knowledge and new skills that allows me to do better, right? My favorite Maya Angelou quote, right? Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. So it's this constant lifelong learning idea. So I want you to join me, and I'm going to give you this challenge to take some time to reflect on your own regulation, take stock of your toolkit. Which one of these skills do you need to hone? Which one do you need to practice? Maybe you've got a good handle on your own self-regulation, but you're really struggling with the empathy piece. You get too enmeshed. Or maybe you've got the first two down, but you really need to work on your connection-based communication, right? Don't give up. Keep learning, keep striving. So let me know, make a comment, email me, let me know, what's going on. You can email me directly, Debra, Debra, at stepsfordevelopment.com. And I'd love to help you on this journey. If you need somebody to bounce ideas off, if you're looking, to see, is coaching what I need to develop these skills? I'd be delighted and honored to be able to help you through that journey. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that your journey is going well. And, find some joy, connect with your child, and let me know how things are going. Take care until next time. Bye for now.